So thank you very much for being with us for another session of the Summer Connect University. Many thanks to all the colleagues who are here in the room and those who are watching us from the live stream. We are here to tackle one more subject, a hot subject in the area of cybersecurity as part of our Connect University summer sessions. And I'm delighted to welcome wonderful speakers to tackle a very important issue that is linked to the problem of skills we have in the area of cybersecurity. And we have been developing policies in the European Union to build a European cybersecurity ecosystem, legislative frameworks to tackle how we deal with crisis, how we deal with setting up our European cybersecurity agencies, how we manage research, innovation, but we have not forgotten how to deal with the workforce and the people behind all these efforts. And whereas we have an increasingly interesting and high demand for ICT jobs, when it comes to cybersecurity, we know that this is a particular challenge. The challenge to find people who are experts, to find people who know what they're doing at all levels, not just in terms of IT skills, but all the skills that are needed to deal with cybersecurity, and more importantly, also how to retain these people in this job. So we have multiple challenges that we are facing. So our session today is entitled Attracting and Retaining More Women in Cybersecurity. Why women? Because, first of all, cybersecurity, like many other domains, and as a very fast advancing technology sector, needs diversity. And when it comes to diversity, you also need the workforce of women, women who can offer another perspective in the sector and who can reinforce the sector. And whereas in ICT we see a growing trend, but still limited amounts of women who enter already the STEM studies and then work into the technology sector, in cybersecurity the challenge is even greater. At this point in time in Europe, we're looking at only 11% of women in the sector, rather low. And if you match that with the skills gap that we have in Europe, which is approximately 350,000 jobs until 2025, the problem is quite severe. So we're trying to see how do you find solutions to tackle this problem? How do you bring more women? How do you bring more skills in this sector? And we have with us some distinguished speakers. I'm delighted to introduce as our first speaker, Jane Franklin. I met Jane through her book that I bought myself called Insecurity and Addressing Why a Failure to Attract and Retain More Women in Cybersecurity is actually making us all less safe. And I got to know Jane's further work because she's involved in a lot of initiatives that surely she will talk to us about, that are about adding skills to the sector and to our workforce in cybersecurity. Jane, thank you for joining us, and we are really looking forward to your insights, also from the perspective of your exposure, not just through your authorship, but also through your professional career in cybersecurity.
Thank you. Thank you. So I am delighted to be here. So I'm just going to check that works and everything like that. So thank you for being here. I am here because we have got a problem. So a failure to attract and retain women in cybersecurity is making us less safe. And what I'm going to be doing is running through three things. I'm going to start off with why. Why are we working on women? Why do women matter in cybersecurity? Why did I do the work that I am doing now? And then going to be focusing on, what progress are we making? And also, what is our ambition? And then I'm going to be looking at how do we attract and retain more women in cybersecurity? Now, I'm hoping that there's going to be a time available for you to ask me questions and things like that at the end. But if there isn't and we're not connected, then please do reach out to me. I am available. I just might be slow at connecting with you. But I definitely will do that. So I'm going to start with who I am. So my name is Jane Frankland. I'm a cybersecurity entrepreneur, an international speaker and author. And I have been in the industry for over 21 years. I built and sold a global penetration testing company. And I am one of the top global influencers out in the world. And I'm also a LinkedIn top voices. So out of over 500 million people, they selected only 26 in the UK, but about 300 in the world. So my voice counts for something, and I'm very proud of both of those things. I am also a board advisor to a few companies. I'm out there advising CISOs as well. I'm an awards judge for about 6 awards, so they range from cybersecurity through to tech, through to writing. I contribute still actively to standards and certifications, and I'm very much a campaigner and the voice. I'm featured a lot in the media as well, so these are some of the places that you might have seen me. And I'm a mum to 3 kids, and I always say that's my most important dog. I actually had a slide on my dog and my children, but I removed it. So that's my most important job. I have written this book, so this journey started in 2015 when I picked up an ISC Squared report, and having been in the industry for so long, I was actually really shocked at the numbers. I thought there were more women in the industry than there are now. But what bothered me more was the declining trend. So in 2015, I saw that women had declined in 2009 from about 18% to around about 10 or 11%, and that's what we were hovering on. And so I set about writing and took a weekend to do that. I thought I was going to be persecuted for what I wrote, but I thought, this is my view, I'm going to get it out there, be brave, and that's what I did. And following on from that, I was asked to write in more magazines, and then one Christmas I thought, let's turn this into a report, let's help more people. And over about 2 weeks, a week and a half, when I didn't have my children, I wrote this report. And as that report was 15,000 words, I knew that a book minimum was 30,000 words, so I thought, if I do a few interviews, I can write this up quickly and add more value. And so that's how the book came about, this book here. It took much longer than a few weeks to write 92,000 words. I traveled the world speaking to women and speaking to men and really trying to understand what was going on with the problem that we had. You know, why were the numbers falling? Why were more women leaving the industry than staying into it? What was really going on? And I've got fresh data, I collect fresh data now, but that's really how the book came about. So that's really kind of why I am here, to focus on women. Now, when I was researching all of this, several things came out. I thought that just being a woman would kind of give me that experience, that knowledge, but actually I realized that I knew very little when I set about it. You know, I knew nothing. My experiences in security were not typical of a lot of other women. And I went out there, I researched women from throughout the ecosystem and gathered that information. And what I found was that women were having to work twice as hard, if not 10 times as hard. They were being paid less than men, despite being more qualified. And they might be 50% of them had qualifications, higher qualifications than men, degrees or higher, and yet men were being put into management positions 9 times the rate as women, and 4 times into C-level or executive positions than women. So that's really kind of what my research has stemmed from, and since then I continue to do a lot of work. And I'm the founder of Cybersecurity Capital, which is all about, it's really all about business strategy and performance excellence. And what we do is we concentrate on gender to do that, because there is an uplift when we work to get more women into business. And I'll come on to that in a few minutes. But I'm the founder of Cybersecurity Capital, a training and consultancy company, and the Insecurity Movement. And the Insecurity Movement is really about helping women to get into the industry, to be empowered and inspired and develop their careers. And there's various things that we work on, various movements and campaigns that we work on. So what we do know right now is that we are suffering many more cyber attacks than before. We've got more sophisticated attacks. We've got more costly breaches. And as a result of that, we're seeing a talent or a skills shortage. Now, again, when I wrote the book, what the numbers were saying then was that we had a 1.8 million deficit by 2022. The numbers have risen now, so the numbers are around about 3 million. And it's different depending on which area you are in the world. But that's what the state of affairs was then. Now, certainly when Churchill is one of the greatest leaders of all times, and I'm going to refer to him because what he did during the Second World War was he brought diverse people together, the majority of which were women, at Bletchley Park. And because of the diversity of thinking, but still drawing from the female aspect, what happened was that we were able to shorten the war by about 2 or 3 years. So in times of war, we pull together, we come together instead of having what we have now in cybersecurity. We have, whether it's 90% or 80%, whatever it is, but we have the majority of people in the industry are men. And that is not working for us. So Churchill did that, and he knew that simply interacting with people who are different forces us to think in different ways. It forces us to prepare better, to anticipate alternative viewpoints, and also to expect that reaching consensus will take effort. And it encourages us to search for new information, to be more creative and diligent and harder working, which results in better decision making and problem solving. And that's what we have to do. We're not going to get rid of cyber attacks just as the night follows the day. They're still going to be there, but we can do a better job of reducing our risk and bouncing back. So we know that having more women in business works. And when you have more women in business, there is a strategic and competitive advantage. Teams are more productive, they are more innovative, profitable, and cost-effective compared to homogeneous teams. And gender and cultural diversity can actually offer a 35% productivity and profitability uplift, which is significant. And in the UK, for every 10% increase in gender diversity, EBT will rise by 3.5%. But when we look at it from a risk perspective, women do gauge risk differently. So Burns, Miller, and Schaefer actually did a study in 1999, I think it was, and they looked at 150 papers and on gender diversity, looking at risk specifically, and they determined that that was the case. Men and women do see risk in a different way. Women are far better at assessing odds than men, and that often comes out in an increased avoidance of risk. And they are naturally detailed and explorative with their thinking. And these are skills that we need for correctly identifying threat actors and protecting environments. And then other studies are out there, and they report differences as well. So women are more compliant. So this came from a study from a company called Culture, and they surveyed 10,000 people in the Nordics. And what they said was that women were more compliant of rules and regulation and better at embracing controls and technologies than men. Women show less risky behavior and report less hacked accounts, accidental installations of spyware, malware, and viruses than men, and women don't give away PII, personally identifiable information, online as freely as men. They don't fall for cyber attacks that are written purely for men. Women have high intuition. They have high emotional and social intelligence, which helps them make good decisions quickly without having all of the information. And because we're going into the fourth industrial revolution, that era, we need to be more agile to be making decisions much more quickly. So they also have a natural ability to remain calm during times of turbulence, again, skills that we need in our industry when breaches occur. And the collective intelligence increases as the percentage of women in a group increases. So these are all things that have come from studies. And we know when I was writing the book, one of the things that I did was I looked at, is this a case of nature or is it nurture? And there was no conclusion with this at all. The facts are very interesting. We can see that women do process information in a different way to men. They use different areas of their brain to men. Men have bigger and heavier brains relative to their body sizes compared to women. So there's lots of different things going on to do with the brain, and the brain is plastic and it can rewire. And then we have hormones. We have estrogen and testosterone, and they operate in different ways. So estrogen being much more collaborative and bonding, the hormone for that, and testosterone being much more about being competitive and risk-taking and things like that. And of course, there are ranges and at different times in your life. And then there are some studies that went on in India with the Khasi tribe, and in Tanzania with the Maasai tribe. And what they looked at was, is this a case of culture? Is this a case of society? And what they determined was the Maasai tribe is patriarchal, the Khasi tribe is matrilineal, and they both they came to the conclusion that actually it could be to do with culture, how we are raised, how we are brought up. And there was a study that went on in the UK with 15-year-old girls and boys, and they looked at co-ed and they looked at single-sexed girls' schools, and they determined that actually girls behave more like boys when they've gone to an all-girls school. So the competitive choices change. And all of these things come we come to a conclusion. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Who knows? All we know is that it's going on. And so when we look at the progress that we are making, really the question that I've got to ask is, what is our ambition? Have we set it? I know that some companies have. You've got companies like Accenture out there that have set a target to reach 50-50 by, I think it's 2024, but I might have to check that, so don't hold it to me. But they are doing a really, really good job, and they are very active about that. Fujitsu is another company that has set a target of 30%, and I'll talk about them in a few minutes. But really, what have we set? We haven't set a target globally. You know, when it comes to the skills gap and things like that, we do have this information out from ISC Squared, which is a new study. It came out in 2018. They are assessing the skills gap in a different way, the workforce in a different way to how it was done when I wrote the book in 2015, 2016. They are saying that we've got 24% of women in security now, which is great. Other studies are out there from Forrester and from Cybersecurity Ventures. And here's one that came out, and it said that this year, expect to see 20% of Fortune 500 CISOs to be women. Hopefully that will be, and it's great that some data is being collected, but what I want is more data. I want more accuracy. I want us to be having data-led, data-driven conversations, and it's actually why I am doing a lot of work in collecting the data. We are seeing more investment from governments, and that is absolutely brilliant, and we need more of that to go on. I've just put down here some of the initiatives that are going on from China or the US or Canada or the UK and Europe and Australia. And we're seeing more initiatives come through from large tech companies as well, which is really good. I mentioned Accenture a few minutes ago, but Tripwire, Palo Alto, Kaspersky, IBM, Fujitsu, Cisco, they're all doing things to help to get more women into the industry and staying in the industry. So how can we make more progress? Well, we have to recalibrate. This is really important. So we have to recalibrate, and this is how I see us right now. We are living in the victim triangle, the drama triangle. And in fact, the beard over there and I were having a conversation. So Patrick, who is formerly known as the beard from now on, we're having a conversation about this earlier, and I'm sure we'll discuss this in a few minutes. But in the drama triangle, we have the persecutor, who is, it's all your fault. They're critical, they're blaming, they're controlling and superior. We have the victim, poor me, powerless, hopeless, stuck. And we have the rescuer, poor you, let me help you. They're enablers, they relieve the pain and things like that. That is typically how we are operating right now. And it's not how we need to be. We need to be coaches, we need to be more empowered. We cannot remain solving this problem from this position, because that circulates, it goes round, and we move around those different roles. It's not sustainable. So we have to stop with that drama. We have to also stop describing norms, referring to these low numbers, because when we do that, that can actually turn out to be how we want it to be. You know, prescribing norms can actually become how things should be. So we've got to stop that. We've got to tell a more positive story. And we also need to be tracking. We also need to be tracking our movement. We need to be tracking our movement. There we go, it's gone off. We need to be tracking our progress. So we do need to get more accurate when we are referring to women in cybersecurity. We need to get better at design and measurement, plus reviewing 30 to 40 years of historic interventions like diversity training, like negotiation, mentoring support, and networking. Is it working? It depends on the objective. So I remember going into a company, it was a financial company a few years ago, and what they wanted me to do was go in and put in a women in security program. They were losing women, and it became very apparent that the only reason that they wanted me to go in was actually to tick a box and to avoid a lawsuit, because they were not prepared to invest. They were not prepared to invest more than £5,000, which is an insult considering the value of that team and the value to the company, to the work that's to be done. So is it just being used as a tick box? Is it just being used to stop lawsuits happening from the accusation of his harassment policy, et cetera, et cetera? So we have to stop with that. We have to stop with the blame mongering too, because we are all biased. And if you really want to understand what your bias is, please go take a test from the implicit association test that Harvard do. And it will look at all different things like racial as well as gender and so forth. And you can see, I did it. I didn't know anything about this. And when I did it, I was actually quite horrified as to the extent of mine. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight. It doesn't make it right, but that's just how it is. And then we have a herd mentality. You know, we are wired to think of people as friend, foe, or mate. And we don't like change. We like to stay with what's normal. We work very hard actually to maintain the balance, to maintain the status quo. And we are incentivized by loss rather than gain. And we apply a moral licensing. I'm conscious of time. And then this system 1 and 2 processing that really is for people who define norms. And I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes, but basically system 1 is fast, it's unconscious, it's automatic, it's everyday decisions, and it's error prone. And it's what we do automatically. We're biased, so we're making decisions based on that. System 2 is much more slower, it's conscious, it's effortful, we solve complex problems when we use system 2 thinking, and it's more reliable. And the best way actually to see this going on is with a Stroop test here. So if you were to read out the words here, green, blue, orange, black, blue, green, you would read them very quickly, and that's your system 1 thinking kind of kicking in. If you read the words here, and working on the basis you're not colorblind, if you read the words and they don't correspond to their colors, so you're going to read them out much slower than you would with the cordiant words and colors. So that gives an example of system 2 processing working. We have to stop with limited beliefs. As women, we have got to be much more expansive with our thinking. We've got to go out and grab it. You know, it is ours for the taking. We've got to stop being kept down. And half the time I see us keeping ourselves down with our limited thinking. That has to stop. There are no barriers. You have to see that there are no barriers. So it's really important, and this is especially important for empowering women in the workplace. You know, if the environment isn't right, then fine, move on and find an environment and look for signals where it is right. We don't have to put up with this, and we can vote with our feet. There are good companies out there, we have to find them. We do have to help companies to become better companies, but right now we have to stop using metaphors and phrases like knocking on the door, storming the citadel, or smashing the glass ceiling. They're not serving as a tool. So we have to look at strategy. We've got to be more strategic when we look at this. And here's my view on how we do that. We've got to look at education. We've got to change the way that we are educating the new workforce that's coming in, whether they are career pivoters or whether they are coming in from schools and colleges. The support systems out there for our education aren't working. And we know that, yet very little is being done, and they are slow. So we've got to change that. And with the input from the tech companies, that is helping to do that, helping us to do that. When it comes to career pivots, and I know that the Beard will talk more about both of those things, but we can go for the low-hanging fruit. We can go for lawyers and auditors and women in tech and women in HR and teachers and journalists. They will have skills that make a very easy transition for us. So we have to, it's a very, very hard area, that actually, the pivoters and the new entrants. I'm going to leave the beard to talk about that. And then for women in security, we've got to really support and look at this in a different way. So those are our consultants, our practitioners, and our boomerang hires. So keeping in contact, nurturing those women that leave, finding out why they have left, because that isn't going on right now. And we've got to get tactical. That's our third step that we've got to do. So yes, we are doing a better job, and we need to do a better job of raising awareness. We have to stop talking about STEM. We need we need to talk about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. So those are all skills. We can't afford to actually be selective with how we're recruiting right now. We have to recruit in a different manner. We have to recruit on aptitude. And that also plays into the era that we're moving into, the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0. We have to shape norms through stories and design. Again, referring back to what I was saying earlier. So we can tell better stories, we just have to get more creative about telling a better story. It's not that we're lying, it's not really that we're spinning, but we are just achieving our objective by going about it in a different way. And this comes back to behavioral science. So here's an image. How well represented are women in tech in our company? Doesn't look like they're very well represented. Here's another image here. How well do women in tech compare to women in other sectors in the company? Well, it's a different kettle of fish. So we really need to be thinking about this in a different way. I'm so over time, I'm so sorry. Visible role models. This is a big focus of mine right now. Visible role models. We have to be it to see it. When I talk about visibility, I include voice. Voice is very, very important. But being visible is one of the best ways that you can advance your career. So get the most out of your career, however you want it to be. I'm not saying that you have to step up and be like me or be a leader or whatever. It's entirely up to you how you do it. But you have to know about this. And what I am calling out for is more role models. And I am teaching women how to do that. I'm teaching companies, if they've got an appetite, for how to do that. I have a program that I've run for 3 years now, and it's just going right now. But it's so important. When women get visible and then others can see that they are doing visible work, then their career advances 2.5 times the speed at which it would if they're not visible. It is really important. We have great visible role models here that I've just pulled together. But we need so many more. We need so many more. We've got to make women feel like they belong too. And there are different ways that we can use visible role models or role models. We have amazing role models in the industry, it's just that they're not very visible. So role models do need to be used differently depending on where we want them to come in, how we're using them. So for example, role models need to be used differently if we're looking at hiring or retaining. So if you are targeting female teenagers, then beware of using role models that actually might defy different stereotypes. So for example, models that portray more than one competing stereotype. And I'm not saying that this is always the case, it's just that you need to know about it. So if you have someone who is pretty going in and talking about tech or security, then they are competing stereotypes. You have to assess what's working. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then know about it. But really, it's about having data-led conversations, driven-led conversations. When we're retaining talent, we need to use female role models who are at different stages in their career, not just in leadership. It's really, really important. And when we are hiring fresh talent, what's more important is actually displaying values than actually using a female role model. The values are important. We can still use a male role model to come in and inspire if they adhere and hold the values that we want. Hiring and talent management. Job specs have got to be written from the ground up. I appreciate that everyone is really busy and a copy and paste job is quick and easy to do, but we've got to stop that. If we want to change this, we've got to stop it. We need to stop calling for certifications as well. So more than 35% of all positions call for at least one of the major certifications. So CISP or CISM or GIAC, cybersecurity essentials rather. And interviews need to be structured. So we need to get away from panel interviews, because then you only have a data point of one. So all of these things are no good. And we need to be applying this. We need to make gender shortlists in our recruitment a reality. And by that, I mean 50-50. So go out to recruitment companies and use HR and your hiring consultancies and hiring managers, and make sure that you are insisting and refusing to move forward with an interview unless you get 50-50. When a woman is interviewed, you get a 24% likelihood of a woman being employed. It's massively important. Now, Fujitsu applied this rule fairly recently, last year actually, between August and December, to one of their hardest areas, and it was actually in sales, but what they found was it actually improved 35%. So we need to do this. I know that there are other CISOs out there. Emma Smith, who's a CISO at Vodafone, she insists on having parity when it comes to recruitment. If you as a recruiter can't provide me with equal numbers of men to women, I will not see anyone. So it's hard, it really is, and I know it's hard for the recruiters because there are lower numbers of women out there, but it can be done and it's got to be done. This is the effects of bias here. So based on an 8-tier organization with 500 positions, if there is a 1% bias in favor of men, then gender parity at entry level will mean only 29% female representation at the top level of an organization. And if it's 5%, then that will rise to 35%. And we need to watch out when women are in our companies for the review bias, because men are judged and still are judged based on their potential, whereas women, it's to do with performance. So establish what good looks like. It amazes me that this isn't done as standard in companies. What does good look like? All these practices are good for both genders, but they do work for women as well. So what I'm about is doing this together and making sure that we have an environment that works for all genders, but it actually increases the numbers of women. So we've got to perform reviews and beware of the performance bias. So women are called bossy and abrasive and strident much more, 35% more than men are. We are penalized because of it. We're not paid the same for the same work. And that is the fastest way for us to go, and we do find out. So there was a report that came out in 2016 for women, actually, and it showed that actually women were leaving companies based on that. It wasn't to do with families or flexibility. It was to do with pay. We leave if we are not paid the same, period. So we are the barometers in the workplace. And what we need to establish is psychological safety. So all too often we have an environment where we have low support and low challenge. So we have environments where we are not stretched, we are not developed, and so we have environments where there is apathy, where you get job swords, and so you don't get good performance. Sometimes we have high support, so people are rewarded, they are paid, and they are supported emotionally, but they're not stretched. And those are environments where we see kind of moderate achievement and development, but we have very much a reliance on the manager, and they are not conducive for Industry 4.0. So they're not helpful for the era that we're moving into. Then we have high challenge and low support. And again, there's a lot of this in our industry. So you're thrown in at the deep end. Make this job your own. There's maybe no job spec, even though there was one that you kind of looked at when you came were recruited in. It's chaos. If you swim, you pick up, it's a sink or swim environment. If you learn to swim, you pick up faulty techniques and then you pay it forward, and then it becomes the culture. So they are not good environments. Some people will thrive in environments like that, but the vast majority don't. So you see a lot of churn. The environments that do work have high support and high challenge. And these are psychological safety environments that work for all people, where you get consistent high achievement and development. And people are out there, they are stretched, they are developed, they are supported. They can fail, which is hard in our industry, but they are supported. And then that means that you have a steady pipeline of new people, women in our case, wanting to come into our industry. So you don't have a recruitment problem. We need codes of conduct. You know, right now I'm championing a code of conduct for security conferences based on something that happened last year, but also based on research that came out from the book. I'm looking at sexual harassment, I'm looking at inappropriate behavior, I'm looking at voices. Women tell me that they want to speak. Conference organizers tell me that they can't find women. Women tell me that they have been harassed, whether that's inappropriate behavior, harassment, name-calling, whatever, or whether it's sexual harassment. We have stories on all of this. I want the data, and that's what this survey is all about, and it's making sure that there is a code of conduct and repercussions if those things occur. And right now, that's just for conferences. The survey has just finished. We've got 15,000 responses from women worldwide, which is pretty amazing, and the data is very insightful already. But we need more of that, and we need this to go on into our industry, so it becomes code of conduct for our industry. Mentoring, sponsoring, networking. Women aren't networking, they're not treating their network as an asset. We've got to get better at this. Women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. The two are very different, the two are needed. But sponsoring really helps with career progression. So women need to be making themselves more visible so that they can attract a mentor. And I do want to see women attracting a mentor where a mentor or a sponsor reaches out to them, as opposed to tapping one up saying, will you be my mentor, will you be my sponsor? That's so, it's just, you know, yes, great, good on you for doing that. But I want women to be empowered. You know, again, my mentor I was lucky enough to have a mentor many years ago when I needed one. I wrote about it in here. Amazing mentor, really helped me when my business was struggling. But I didn't go out and say, will you be my mentor? You know, I didn't even know about mentors then. He took me under his wing and he showed me the way. And thank goodness, because I learned so much, and he actually saved my company. I saved my company. My company saved my company. My team saved my company. But I couldn't have done it without him. So be the magnet, and we need to be doing more of that. And when women are sponsored and mentored, we pay it forward. So we see a direct correlation with our salaries; they increase fast, and then we also pay it forward for the next generations. So we've got to be encouraging all of those things. And then we need to be using guys. You know, guys aren't the problem. The system is the problem. The patriarchy is the problem. Men are the solution. Men are the answer. We've got 80 to 90% of men in our industry. We need to use them. Men want to help. A lot of great men out there. Many great men want to help. They want to be part of it, and that's why the insecurity movement exists, so that we can all come together to create these environments and be empowered together to do that. So we need to be smart about how we're tackling this, and we very much need to do it together. So I ask you to be the domino. Please be the domino. We can change this. We can change this. And we are making small steps which lead to quantum leaps. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to hand back now. There's probably no time for questions.
Thank you very much. Jane, thank you for your inspiring speech, which was exactly what we needed to kick off this session. Thank you for your insight. Definitely data-driven. As you said, it's very important that we speak on the basis of facts rather than anything else. And to continue the discussion, very much prompted by what you said we need, I also wanted to share with you some facts as to how we recalibrate in Europe. Yeah. Because we're also, I will borrow your clicker if you don't mind. I just wanted to share also, by means of introducing the next speakers, how we're dealing with all these issues in Europe, because we did set as a priority in the last years in the European Commission to encourage more women in technology and in cybersecurity. We have a woman commissioner, Maria Gabriel, who has made that a concrete priority of hers, so-called Women in Tech. She's a very enthusiastic advocate herself of the need for more women in the tech sector, and she's the one who launched the Women in Digital program. We very recently published our annual Digital Society and Economy Index, the so-called DESI Index. And in that index this year, we have a specific index for women in digital. And we saw that only 17%, this is only for the European Union, of ICT specialists are women. So already the figure overall in ICT in Europe is rather low. And at the same time, we saw that those countries that are higher on the scale are the ones that are also higher when it comes globally to digital economy and society progress. So those societies that are more advanced in technology and how they have advanced their societies through digital transformation are also doing better with regard to including women in their workforce. So this is an interesting correlation that we hope as we advance and as we try to have measures to help those countries that are at the lower end of the scale to advance, they will also advance when it comes to including more women in the field. The figures we get from studies for the cybersecurity area is that we were at 11%. I think this is the figure that you also quote in your book, and that we're hoping that after 2019, this will be over 20%. That's quite an optimistic perspective, but this is what we find in current studies. At the same time, we have seen an increase in the trend of women in management. For instance, when it comes to the 500 Chief Information Security Officers, you see there a trend from 13% in 2017 to 20% in 2019. And other studies we have looked at recently show us that women do very well, and the percentages of women are even higher in some companies in the management field. But when it comes to operational areas, there they continue to be at the lower end of the workforce and at very low percentages. So what we have done is we have launched this Women in Digital program, which is about combating exactly what you said, the gender stereotypes, and promoting role models, absolutely. And I saw that in your presentation, it is about promoting role models. So we have gathered a wonderful group of women who want to support this and who will become mentors also themselves and will seek this mentorship, spreading this mentorship across Europe, increasing the number of girls who study and graduate in the ICT fields, and promoting digital entrepreneurship for women. We have a lot of programs in the European Union for financial support for entrepreneurship. So we are now trying to channel these programs to the specific area of promoting digital entrepreneurship for women. We also have a declaration that was recently signed by 27 European Union member states and Norway, where they make a particular commitment, and this comes to putting actions in your words, that was also part of what you told us, how to have a national plan for women in digital, how to have a Girls' Day and Women in ICT and keep that, and how to cooperate with the private sector to tackle the issue. And I would like to come to that because you focused a lot on the private sector in your presentation, but when it comes to cybersecurity, we see a brain drain from the public sector to the private sector for obvious reasons. A lot of talented people are attracted by the private sector, whereas they have started their careers in the public sector. Maybe the public sector can become the area of strength for women, exactly because of the reasons of their characteristics that you described. It will be interesting to see how we do that. And this is where we also participate in the Women for Cyber, which brings me also to our next speaker. This is an initiative we launched together with the European Cybersecurity Organization here in Brussels under the patronage of the European Commissioner for the Digital Single Market. The founding members are all female, but they come from various strands of life and society and various jobs, be that from, we have anything from diplomats to mayors to lawyers to crypto professors to operational cybersecurity people. So it is really a very wide range of professionals who are the founding members. And our main aim is to define concrete actions, again, to really deliver something that makes a difference. And thank you for bringing us some good examples, and we'll come also to that when it's Patrick's turn. I will refer to him as Patrick, so that people also know the name. And we need to know these concrete actions. So the Women for Cyber is an initiative that was launched a few months ago here in Brussels in collaboration with the European Cybersecurity Organization, the European Commission and its founding members. And I'm delighted to welcome here with us Annette Madinator, who is not only someone who has held actually public office in cybersecurity, both at the Hungarian government and also in NATO. You were a member of the cyber defense team. I think you will tell us more about that. And who has been in the heart of the Women for Cyber. She's actually our leading force, I would say, moderating a lot of our efforts and where we're going. And she will tell us why we think this can make a difference in Europe, and then we bring that in the next part of our discussion. And I thank you for also being with us today.
Now I can take the microphone. Thank you for that. Actually, I was chairing the NATO Cyber Defense Capability Team for 3 years, which is significant. That is really a significant achievement because I was elected by an anonymous voting. From the perspective that I was the only female member of the team, I think it's a significant achievement, especially if you see that from the perspective of Women for Cyber Initiative, which did not exist at that time, but still interesting. So yes, thank you for this introduction. And thank you, Jane, for bringing up a lot of ideas that I can reflect to in my speech. I'm not having a presentation because I didn't really want to have something that organized. I wanted to move on by the thoughts that are communicated or that were communicated by the previous speaker, and I wanted to reflect to those thoughts. A couple of words about myself. As Despina already pointed out, I used to be part of the Hungarian public administration for a while, but I also have my experience from the private sector, because now I'm responsible for strategic business development and operations, especially in the international area of a small but powerful Eastern European SME or Central European SME, cyber services. We are founding members of the European Cybersecurity Organization, and as such, I'm the first advocate for the Women for Cyber Initiative for EXO, European Cybersecurity Organization. Many ideas were actually highlighted in Jane's speech, and let me reflect back a little. That is absolutely true that cybersecurity and cyber defense by now is a very diverse environment. So by now we can't say that someone really is a cybersecurity or cyber defense expert, because there are sub-areas, sub-domains that can be already characterized and can be spoken individually about. Still, it's mostly dominated by men, obviously. From the public administration perspective, that may come from the thing, let's say, that cyber defense and cyber security as such is very strongly tied to national security. When someone comes from the private sector, this may not be the most obvious issue, but for public administrations and for critical infrastructure who work very closely together with security in general, that angle of cybersecurity is an obvious thing. And that may be one of the reasons why not so many women are attracted to that part of cybersecurity and cyber defense. This is not the most important issue, I guess, because this does not reflect very much to the overall cybersecurity community, but still it's an interesting and important special segment for that. And in that special segment, us women come from a very low ratio, but that's also true, as it was already pointed out by Jane, for cybersecurity in general. And as we move, as we see the potential career paths for women, that was already supported by statistics and numbers, it's absolutely true that women may reach to a leading position at a company. And when I say that, I think about CISO level or even COO level, which is the lead of operation or head of operation. But it hardly ever happens that a woman can become the CEO, so the highest level manager or the top manager of a cybersecurity company. Later on, when we can move on with the with the studies in the upcoming years, and we can actually have more data about what sort of roles women take in cybersecurity, this may be an interesting angle that we should definitely investigate. So there is definitely a glass ceiling that is very difficult to step over, especially for those who have already in leading positions for a couple of years or even for many years. So that's one of the areas that would be worth investigating further. If we move a little bit to lower areas of management, the mid-management layer is actually of more women than the top management layer. One of the reasons what I actually experience in my everyday life, and I do value it, is how women are able to collaborate. So that was already pointed out, the difference between how men work and how women work. There is a difference. So it would be, I think it would be a lie if we didn't try to understand that kind of difference. And what we are better at, I believe I can say that, us women, is coordination. So in many situations that were already listed and mentioned, that when there is a crisis situation or there needs to be a certain incident management process run, then it's actually women who can collaborate without fighting one another. So that is a significant added value that we have. I believe that may be one of the reasons why women are having more voice in that kind of management layer. And the other reason maybe is that because it's really not that high. So it's like a mid-management layer. But even there, still, there is room to improve. Women for Cyber as an initiative is planning and aiming to take these two layers of management and to help women to have more room in these layers of management from a strategic view. Women for Cyber is a kind of strategically driven, I could even say top-to-bottom approach initiative, as it was already mentioned. It was launched and it's run by the European Cybersecurity Organization in collaboration with the European Commission. So it's a joint initiative. Why joint? You could have the question. We thought that the merrier the better, and we definitely want to make a very good use or take a very good use or even take advantage of the drives and the means and the vehicles that the Commission is able to offer to support this initiative. I will get back to one particular, let's say, vehicle in a couple of minutes, when we are talking a little bit more about how to tackle this issue, how to entertain more women or how to grab more women into cybersecurity in general, which will be about a specific job portal related initiative, but a little bit more about it a bit later. So basically, there are some key areas or let's say key activity areas of Women for Cyber as an initiative. The first is quite an obvious one. It's identifying and linking the community. This is one feature that many of the initiatives run anyway, so I'm not going into details about it. But it's still very important because it provides a lot of visibility and very powerful visibility. We have just been on LinkedIn. And even in the first couple of weeks, we entertained so many women and men that was actually surprising even for us. So the topic is hot. And the topic is worth pulling efforts into, I have to tell you. I don't have the exact numbers of our visibility, but for the ladies who work behind managing the LinkedIn profile of the initiative, so they told me that it was just really, really striking. So in the first couple of weeks, they couldn't even answer to all comments and all reactions that we got via the online media. So that also reflects that we really have to work on this topic because that is important here in Europe. The second most important issue is is to develop and grow this community that are interested in attracting more women in cyber, and that is basically about women in cyber. The basic means for this may be awareness, so creating awareness of what the situation is. And for that, I believe showing numbers and being it a data-driven or statistics-driven initiative is extremely important and helpful. So we really have to know what we are talking about. It does make a difference whether there are 10% of women in cybersecurity leadership, or there are 25% of women in cybersecurity leadership. And at this point, let me go a little bit personal. I come from, so I represent an SME. So the company where I work is, so it employs approximately 30 cybersecurity experts. The vast majority, which means more than 90% of our employees are certified ethical hackers. And they have even more special cybersecurity professional skills. So they are really, really special experts. Many of them are analysts, and many of them come from national security and military security. But even in this environment, we managed to have approximately 23-25% of women on board. And the salary scheme is actually equal. So it doesn't matter at our company whether one is a woman or a man. We have these unified salary schemes. So if someone is a cybersecurity analyst or applied intelligence expert, has to receive exactly the same amount of salary and additional benefits, no matter whether the person is a man or a woman. It doesn't make a difference, because we want to appreciate all the skills that may be brought on board by men and women. Because even if we create an equality and gender neutrality in allowing or making it possible for men and women for taking certain positions, and even if we give them equal benefits, financial benefits for the same positions, still we have to value their different capabilities. Men are usually able to find something that is a single thing that needs to be found, and a single thing that needs to be managed. It's like having someone who is a shooter. But for women, the capability, the skill set is quite different. Women are collaborative. Women see things more in a horizontal way, especially when it comes to cybersecurity analysis. I know I'm speaking about one particular segment of cybersecurity, but I just wanted to give you an example of how it works and how we appreciate this difference between men and women. So well, there needs to be more coordinative skills on board for a certain procedure. We ask a woman who has the same qualifications to participate and to step forward. So this gender neutrality, I think, is a very delicate issue, and I would like to reach to a point where we make it in a sensible way. But this is also part of our general awareness, that we have a good understanding of what men are capable for and they are excellent in, and what women are capable for and they are excellent in. The second key feature for growing the community and developing the community is actually training. Now, for training I believe is a bit more difficult issue, because the education we usually require, which is the STEM education, is a thing that does not attract so many young women as it would be desirable. There may be many reasons for that, but we just had a very interesting conversation a couple of weeks ago at the General Assembly of the European Cybersecurity Organization, actually. There was a CEO posing a question, who is a CEO of a well-known European cybersecurity company, a large one actually, almost global one. And that person pointed out a man actually pointed out that they have several positions open. They have several training opportunities. They even have education opportunities. But those are extremely difficult to fill by women because women do not show interest. And I'm reflecting back to the difficulty that the HR faces at the moment, or faces at the moment, is that it's very difficult for HR people to actually find that kind of language, find those messages, and find those initiatives that actually attract more women in STEM education, and further trainings that rely on previous STEM education. So this is a key issue that we would also like to tackle somehow. And that leads us to a very important thing that was already mentioned by, I believe, Despina as well, which is the question of role models. Now, Women for Cyber as an initiative basically treats this question as a priority. So finding those women and those men as well, I'm taking it in brackets, but we need them, as it was already mentioned a couple of times. So finding those role models and creating and building up those role models that can be communicated of successful women who are deeply involved in cybersecurity, in operational layers, management layers, and top management layers is of crucial importance. So basically this event is one of those events that are actually already promoting role models, even without openly communicating or deliberately communicating that we are actually advertising role models. Jane is here. Myself is here. I do have a very strong career in cybersecurity and previously in cyber defense. So my career is quite interesting because I come from cyber defense and then I moved on to cybersecurity. I started basically in public sector and then I moved on to private sector. But still on the all the way along, I used to participate in those initiatives that wanted to show somehow that this is possible to have for women. And I also have children, I have my family, I even have hobbies and I am able to bake my own bread, and I do it. So I believe that there are many of such women around who can create brilliant role models for those young women who have the interest in actually jumping into STEM education and then be involved in cybersecurity. The micro, yeah, we lose voice. Yeah. So cybersecurity shouldn't be solely about STEM education and programs that build on STEM education. That is absolutely true, and I think it's a very, very important statement, perhaps one of the most important ones. In my experience, it's of crucial importance that we make it visible and make it understandable that it's not only STEM education that opens the door or opens the way to cybersecurity, especially in coordination positions or even for higher management positions that can be taken by women. Many cybersecurity managers who are women at the moment, especially the older generation, so not the young ones, come from non-STEM education background. And what they can rely on is their human-related capabilities and coordinative capabilities and communication capabilities. So that should also be part of our role modeling promotion. And that leads us to something a little bit different, but perhaps the most practical one that I wanted to highlight today is the question of how to practically drive women towards the path that they can actually be part of cybersecurity. A couple of months ago when we started liaising with the Commission on how to formulate Women for Cyber as an initiative, one of the first ideas, one of the first ideas that we started to discuss was a job portal. And it also has its history. If you have a look at the HR market of Europe at the moment, or more particularly the job portal market of Europe at the moment, you can see many. Okay, even if you advertise yourselves on LinkedIn, you can find many job positions. Or even if you don't sign yourself up to LinkedIn as someone who is open for new challenges, you receive opportunities. That is a given thing. But still, what we don't see is that how these positions sort of, help women more and attract women more to jump into cybersecurity. And there we thought about something specific that is also linked to other activities of the European Cybersecurity Organization that I'm not going to highlight today due to the thank you so much, due to the time limitation. But what we see as an excellent opportunity is that we create a specific job market that provides positions and that advertises opportunities solely for women. We are still seeking for the most successful, potentially most successful business case. But the rationale behind, and please allow me to read a little because it's quite a vast material that we put together for this. So the business case, we are still trying to pull together the most significant or the most, let's say, value-added business case, because we want to do something that is professionally and financially beneficial as well. But we want to highlight on how to grab more women into the market. So basically, we want to create, let's say, a one-stop shop for this opportunity, for job profiling, role modeling, job profiling, and job opportunity advertisement phase. And we want to create a kind of baseline parallel to this that helps HR to understand how to seek for potential employees and what sort of professional features to look for certain positions. I'm going into a bit more details about it in a minute. But one of the other issues we want to tackle with this is helping HR and sort of educating HR and making HR aware of what cybersecurity job positions are really needed. And even one step behind, what new cybersecurity job profiles should be understood for certain positions in Europe. Because what we also experience through our work in Europe is that HR is struggling with cybersecurity, not only because there are not enough experts who could be entertained for certain positions, but HR doesn't really have an up-to-date knowledge about what new professional profiles are growing up in cyber in general. I think it was Jane who previously mentioned certain acronyms that go for certain cybersecurity-related positions, like CISSP. Perhaps it wasn't the one that you mentioned, but I'm just giving an example, that CISSP and so on and so forth. So there are these special acronyms, kind of certifications that are absolutely valuable when someone is looking for a candidate who is able to provide certain engineering skills in cybersecurity, certain information security skills in cybersecurity, certain cryptography skills in cybersecurity, but not necessarily analysis, not necessarily cyber threat intelligence, and not necessarily, I would say, even applied intelligence. So parallel to that, we are trying to attract more women to cyber. We are also trying to give a good and handy tool for what sort of even newer positions we can entertain persons to, cybersecurity persons to in general. To achieve that, we are planning to run multiple programs, especially for identifying cybersecurity-related jobs and competence opportunities. And we want to show potential career paths as well. Like, if you start at this point, which are the potential next 5 steps and next 5 positions that you can reach in your career? and how long does it usually take? I know that this may be very ambitious, let's say, but us who have been dealing with and planning it, we think that if we don't start it, it simply will never happen. So please allow us to be that ambitious. And my closing thought for this, because I think time is running and I need to give opportunity for other speakers. So my message, my take-on message from this Open University session would be is that we need all who are willing to join and willing to help us in creating this new half world in cybersecurity that is dedicated for women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Indeed, the job portal is a very ambitious plan, but a very concrete opportunity to create an action to attract more professionals in the field, young professionals as well. And if we couple it with other initiatives, for instance, the traineeships that are offered under European programs, it can offer really great paths for career also for younger professionals. But when we talk about real-life examples, I am really delighted and very grateful to Patrick Wheeler, who is with us today, who is the co-founder of one of those examples of a best practice, the Cyber Wayfinder, which is a development program for creating workforce around cybersecurity. You will tell us more about that. You're someone with a lot of experience in the area of cybersecurity, both technical, operational, in various fields. You're advising Banque Nationale de Paris, and you're involved in the financial sector. And you're an example of something very particular. Recently, I was in the Silicon Valley, and I was very impressed with the amount of European professionals that have been attracted by the Silicon Valley. But you are from the Silicon Valley. You've been working in Europe for years. So at least in return, we have one very good cybersecurity professional from California, who is now an integrated European, as we were saying. Thank you very much for being with us and for presenting as the Cyber Wayfinder.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me. And indeed, I think some of the challenges that we've seen coming out of Silicon Valley recently helps answer the question of why I made the choice to become European a few years ago. And really, I would love to spend a lot of time talking about the program we're working on, because this is truly a passion project and a project from the heart. But I want to talk about the realities of what we're dealing with here. And I need to roll us back just a slight bit. This is, I share with you a picture of my boss. He's the CEO of one of the largest European banking groups, happens to run BNP. And the lovely thing is they asked him is, cyber keeping you awake at night? And then the next question is, how do banks attract the right talent? And I loved your comment about the brain drain, because we consider ourselves suffering from a brain drain. A lot of people want to go join the fintechs and the fast startups and aren't very interested in working in the large, heavy industry. We're listed as critical international infrastructure, critical national infrastructure in multiple jurisdictions. I should mention my own day job. I am the head of cybersecurity for payments and anti-fraud for payments. That doesn't sound very interesting until you realize that every day we process between 8 and 12% of Europe's GDP. We're not allowed to fail. If we fail, airplanes don't get into the sky, literally. So I want to roll back a little bit, again back to Silicon Valley, and the thing that came before Silicon Valley. You may have heard of a gentleman called Mr. Jobs, Steve Jobs. He had a little computer company. And he was credited, he credited the Whole Earth Catalog as one of the things that he considered inspirational, that formed a great part of his life. And in the back of it, he mentioned in his biography, he quoted the back of this magazine called "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish." I grew up with this magazine on my dinner table, and I actually like the front of the catalog, which talks about access to tools. And this has really been one of the things that is the biggest part of my life. And here's a small picture of me on a small back-to-the-land farm in Northern California when I was a child, learning how to make tools from my father. And when you're doing things by yourself and you don't have a tool, you have to make tools to make other tools. And that is what I find myself doing these days when I'm working in Cyber Wayfinder. I'm trying to make people and tools to be able to solve the problems that we have today as well as tomorrow. And these are them. This is the first group, the first cohort that we have, and I'd like to talk with you a little bit about some of them. I actually don't have her picture. The lady in the front with the headscarf, Sadia, is a lovely lady, and she's one of the happy stories because she's the first woman to work in the Security Operations Center for the nation state of Belgium. She's the first woman wearing a scarf, and she's the first Belgian of Algerian descent? I always get this wrong. I am a victim of California's geographical system. So anyway, when you look at the fact that in our 3 cohorts that we have running at the moment, we've lost track of the number of nationalities and the number of languages, this is something that becomes very real. I like to say this is the face of Europe. This is the future of the Europe that I'm excited by, I'm engaged by, and that I'm truly inspired by. Now, about the program, we reached out to basically the people I consider my family, the people in the financial infrastructure. So we've got Euroclear, we've got SWIFT, we've got BNP Paribas, we've got Proximus, we've got the cybersecurity Belgium. So these are the large industries that we work with. And so we've got a good portion of financial sectors, but also some public sector in here as well. And we're going to be expanding these names as quickly as we can and as much as possible. And I think there's some really lovely stories coming out of this. And I love to pull this one recently because Rosanna Kurer is our true founder and the heart of this program. And I love to see her face up here. And I was giving a talk with some people at the Embassy of Luxembourg recently. And they kind of looked at me and they said, well, but Patrick, what do you do? Who do you work for? And I kind of pointed to the 2 people in the room. One was Jan de Blauwe, the CISO of BNP, and the other was Rosanna Kurer. And I said, I work for Jan during the weekdays, and I work for Rosanna on evenings and weekends. And we've been working on this for quite a few years now. And we've been tackling the issue of why is it that we don't have the type of gender representation we would like to have in cybersecurity. And we've had some quite decent success, I would argue. And I want to walk you through some of the things that we've been doing. Now, we mentioned credentials, or we mentioned certifications. And we have this as a cornerstone of our program. Why? Not because you need a certification to be competent. But as a hiring manager, I'm looking for shortcuts of ways to prove that you're competent. There are very few degrees in cybersecurity. There are very few graduates of those degrees, and I promise you they're not coming to work for my organization if they are. And so we use certification as a shortcut to say that someone has some competencies. But we also know that how you learn something is that you learn by doing it. And so there's a certain amount of structured learning, there's learning from others, and then there's learning from experience. And this is what we've done throughout our history of structured apprenticeships. Rosanna, I love her to death. She's married to a gentleman who's working here in the EU, and he's of Germanic Belgian extraction, as she likes to say. Oh yes, I met him in Japan while he was working on his 2nd postdoc. Anyway, a typical true Belgian EU person, really, really smart. But the thing that I come back to is that German part where we've been doing apprenticeships and learning by doing for generations. And this is one of the things that whenever you talk to someone about cybersecurity, we want to say, how many years of experience do you have? You will not find a single cybersecurity job description these days that doesn't ask for a minimum of 3 years experience. Well, how do you get 3 years of experience if you haven't done it already? And that's a big part of what our program is about engineering that experience so that people are able to get that right up front. But then we also follow that up with the credentialing aspect so that they can put a punctuation mark on it to say, yes, not only do I have the practical experience, but I've also done the book studies to make sure that I actually have covered the full gamut of the requirement set. So we're a 3-year program, and we actually asked them to take 3 certifications, the SSCP, the CISSK, and then the CISSP is the last one. And so far, we're 2 years into this, and it's working quite well. We have yet to have the people pass the CISSP, though, and they're deathly afraid, and I'm very glad about that. This is a tough exam. And so the most important thing that we like to talk about this program is that this is a ladder to success. It's not a guarantee, it's not a giveaway. The most also important thing about it is that we're dealing with people who have other skill sets already. And so we're taking everything that they had before and not throwing it away. We're actually capturing that and using that to help them transform themselves to be this new professional. And this is one of the things that is really important to us, is that this be truly authentic to the people who are doing it, that the motivations of why we're doing this are all of the right reasons. And the word authentic, I really take from this woman. This is Liv Mostray. She's the CEO of Euroclear. I went to talk to her about this program, and I went to talk to her about some of the other challenges we were having, because I was teaching a seminar series for women and their careers. And I was getting a lot of resistance from a lot of the people about the combination of the word woman and career. There were a lot of people who had a really negative association with that. And I said, okay, how can I I can only go to the best woman I know, and Liv is incredible. She's one of the top women in Europe, if not the top women in Europe in finance. And she completely eviscerated our program. And I still remember to this day her notebook notes that she did. And then she looked at it and said, okay, I see what you're doing. Yes, I'll support you. And I was very proud of myself at that moment, because I said, no, Liv, I don't want your support. I want you to give me a man in your chain of command to support us. There is a huge cost to women executives when they support a women's-based program. Jane and I were just talking about this, and we can talk for hours over this, but it's very real. And it's also a cost that is carried by the women who are in the program if it's a women's program. And this is one of the challenges that we face, and we're still continuing to try to face. But what Liv really emphasized is that it has to be authentic. It has to be from the heart. And that's where everything that we do starts from and stays. This is a really bad image, but this is Rosanna giving a presentation at SWIFT. And SWIFT, as I hope you know, is a very large financial infrastructure, very proud Belgian story where we're slinging basically all of the world's money around. And what you don't necessarily notice is that behind Rosanna in this picture is Craig Young, who's the Chief Technology Officer of SWIFT, Gottfried Liebrand, who's the CEO of SWIFT, Jessica Ramos, who's the Chief of Staff back then, as well as Carol, who's our Chief Security Officer. And there were several things that I really learned from these leaders in SWIFT. One of the favorite phrases was the MPS problem: male, pale, and stale. And as someone who's over 50 years old, I was okay with the male and pale part, but I really wasn't okay with that stale element. But I realized that is really a challenge for us in our domain, and that's something that we really need to do. But the other thing that Karel said that I really appreciated is he said, I can hire cybersecurity talent from the open market. SWIFT is a name. If they call, they have enough money, they can pay, they can buy me. But we don't know how SWIFT operates. He says, it takes me 5 years to get that cyber person to know how we work, and by then they're ready to leave. And so what we did with SWIFT is we actually took 4 people who already worked at SWIFT, and we are transitioning them into cybersecurity careers. And this is where the success has come tremendously. And if you think about that, from any large institution like the EU, you guys are arcane from an externalist's perspective. But if you find people who understand how it works inside, and then they transition into cybersecurity, that's 1 uplift instead of 2 uplifts. And that's one of the sweet spots that we really see the success that's been coming out of the SWIFT relationship. Now, I also love this one. This is down in Luxembourg. This is Pascal Steichen. He's the CEO of Security Made in Luxembourg. He runs security for the nation state of Luxembourg. The lady standing right next to Rosanna is his boss. That's Danielle Biesdorf. She works for the Ministry of the Economy. And I really appreciate them coming out to kick off our cohort number 3. So each cohort is about 20 people. So at this point, we've impacted 60 people directly, transitioning them into cybersecurity careers. If you know what Luxembourg is doing on the cybersecurity scale, they are punching far, far and above their weight as far as a country. They're doing some amazing work. And Danielle came out to meet each and every one of these, shake their hands and say, please, we're counting on you. And they took that to their heart very, very authentically to move them forward. This program actually started in Luxembourg. This is a small presentation that I was asked to do many years ago. And it was about cybersecurity as a career for women. And as someone who has a small sideline, professionally speaking, I am ashamed to say this is the worst presentation I ever gave in my entire career. And it triggered everything that I've been doing since then. And the biggest challenge about this was that after I was done, a lot of the women came up to me and said, "Thank you, sir, for taking time from your very important work. You're a very important man, and we really appreciate you coming to talk to us." And they ran off to talk to the people who were doing other things on web development. And meanwhile, their boyfriends wouldn't leave me alone, called me for follow-up coffees, all sorts of contact. And I said, wow, that was really something wrong. And this is what I was telling Jane earlier. This was when I got hit upside the head with the stupid stick. And I said, okay, I have to really look at this and understand a lot more deeply what's been going wrong. It was statistically proven a few years ago that women are better coders than men. And this, of course, melted the internet. Thank you. Of course, we can't have women be better coders than men, even if it was able to be statistically and objectively proven. We had to argue it had to do with the survivorship effect. And so indeed, if you do a normal distribution or a normal graph, you know, women are better than men. I don't really get into the differences. Jane, I'll leave some of you guys to that. It's pure cowardice on my part that I don't get into that. But I saw opportunity here. Because if, in fact, we have only 10% representation of women, what this means is that there is a huge underutilized potential in the women workforce. And this is not just underutilized potential in the average workforce. These are some excellent, excellent people that we can use. And the other thing is that if you meet a woman who is in cybersecurity right now, statistically, odds are she's way better than average. So if you can find one, hire her. So these are some of the things that were my takeaways from some of these discussions. And I said, okay, this is cute, but let's just get to work. But I also said there's a problem in here, which is that we're driving women away. And this is part of the discussion I also had with a young lady who had graduated from a PhD program in Luxembourg who couldn't get a job. But also a lot of people, women, leaving. And I went back to my time in startups in Silicon Valley and a young lady named Angela Hahn, who was a wonderful colleague of mine. She had a bachelor's in statistics and a minor in computer science from UC Berkeley. Angela Hahn sells real estate today. Now, don't cry for Angela. She's selling real estate in Silicon Valley. She's making much more money than I do as a cybersecurity professional, and that's okay. But it is a huge miss for us intellectually and for us in brain power. And this was long before Do I Look Like an Engineer came out. And the fact that she was an attractive young lady and had to deal with all of the toxic stuff that happens in this industry. It's very real. And part of my stupid stick was the assumption that it would be getting better. It's not, and that's where we have to be really active and proactive about making it better. And as I also looked at this, I got really angry with the STEM, esteem discussion, because when I look at my male cybersecurity counterparts, a great many of them don't have a STEM degree. And I'm showing you a couple of pictures. Marc Chappelle, he's one of my favorite CISOs in Paris these days. He has a degree in opera. Now, if you know the discipline and the mental discipline that it takes to get a music degree, oh, there's no question he's fully qualified to have that role. Another gentleman that I love to spend some time with has a degree in psychology. And actually, Becky Pinkard, we were talking, she's a CISO in the UK whom I happen to adore, and she's come over to lecture at our program. She's absolutely amazing. And she also has a degree in psychology. So there's really no STEM barrier to entry in cybersecurity. We're creating a new barrier to entry to women that didn't exist for men. Stop it. Now, that's all great statistics and generalities, but I want to talk to you about Lisette. Lisette's one of the women that Swift gave us. And Lisette, we got an email from Europol a little while back, and Europol said basically, why aren't you up in The Hague? So Europol is someone that I consider rather valuable. When I call them, I need them to answer. When they call me, I need to answer. And so we went up to see them. And one of the ladies at Europol kept looking at Lisette, because Lisette works for Swift at the Leiden data center there. One of the most secured operations you've ever been into, by the way, if you've ever had to walk into that place. And he kept looking at her, she kept looking at her and saying, but don't I know you from somewhere? And Lisette says, yes, you were in my body combat class on Wednesday. Lisette teaches and competes at international levels in body combat in the ecosystem there. So she's already very active and very well known. And she's using all of her capabilities to become a cybersecurity professional. She was a help desk person before. She's originally, I think, from Peru. And she, to me, is just a wonderful example of the kind of European we want. She's no nonsense, down to earth, basically says, give me a chance, and she just grabs it by the neck and runs with it. And she's just an incredible person to be around and to work with. And it was really adorable to see her work with the ladies from Europol about this. The other thing that's really lovely about the program is that when we walk in to a conference, a lot of the men kind of start looking at the address of where they were at and saying, are we in the right place? Because a lot of us practitioners are used to going into rooms that are all men, and almost all white men also. And so this is something that is really fascinating. And I absolutely love the effect of when our teams are able to join. And we really do change the whole discussion and how a lot of this goes on. You can see Lisette here having a great time. And the other thing that I think is really fascinating, and you just start to see a little bit of it in here, is the men who are instructors of this program. In our program, we don't go for professors or PhD people. We go for practitioners. These are the people who are going to be their peers and their colleagues. And we say, we need you to show them what you're doing and how to do it. And so we do very practical hands-on as well as theoretical things. And when it comes to theoretical, Corinne Ancillard is also one of my favorite examples. I love this woman. She's one of mine, actually, in my bank. She, like me, has seen, well, I shouldn't mention a lady's age, but more than a few. Let's just say that her older son was graduating university, and he turned to her and he said, Mom, I see this program you're doing, and I'm so proud of you. I wish I could go through a program also like that. And I just said, what woman of this age with a son graduating university is getting that kind of message? But that's not just the part that I'm excited about Corinne for. Corinne is in my cryptography team. She is basically literally holding the digital keys to my bank. This is the woman that is protecting between 8 and 12% of Europe's gross domestic product. And I have complete and utter confidence in Corinne and her competencies to do that. She didn't at first, and I had great fun with her mentor. We were having coffee the other day, and I said, but what's next for her? And his eyes got really shiny and bright. We have some ideas of what's next for Corinne. She doesn't realize yet where she's going, but we have some plans for her. And so I'm really, really excited about what she's able to do for the second part of her career. She came to me at one point when she was first considering joining the program, and when she finally committed to it, she told me, Patrick, if I was going to take one more night class in Italian, I was going to stick an ice pick in my eye. She had this much brain power. And this is one of my takeaways from this. There is a huge amount of intellectual capacity locked up in the brains of our mid-career workforce that have been underutilized. And this is criminal. We really need to find a way to unleash this energy. Lara is another profile that I find totally fascinating. She's a bit younger and has spent some time in diplomacy. And so she has been spending a lot of time looking at the whole issue around attribution. And we were able to bring her in front of a small conference where they asked me to speak. And so we were able to bring her in as well, not just to break the gender barrier in the conference, but also to really bring some different ideas in. As a traditional practitioner, we don't worry about attribution in the financial sector. We just try to knock them out and keep going. And she had a really different take on it and was really able to be very, very eloquent about why it's important for us to be more proactive and to work with the authorities and to deal with the attribution problem. Now, AMA is another one of our resources that I am completely astounded by. We talk about STEAM, STEM, or someone who has a PhD in opera. There are people who didn't get those opportunities. We know in the Belgian education system, it was well reported recently, that people with darker skin colors are very much diverted to other careers. They pushed very, very hard at AMA for her to become a hairdresser. Now, she's an amazing young lady who's always been technical, and she refused to go that route. And she is now part of Euroclear in their identity and access management. And she's doing an amazing job. She's already been tapped several times for special projects. And this is one of the things that I think is also hugely important about this, is really tapping all of our resources and finding these people who were diverted incorrectly away from a challenging career, whether it was technical or not. And Amma is one of my perfect examples of this, but I have to be really careful because Amma is one of my mentees, so I'm not at all unbiased in that discussion. And speaking of mentees, I ran into a challenge I didn't expect. Access to tools. I just thought I would go grab the tools. And I said, okay, how to become a cyber mentor? I don't know how to be one. How do I go be one? Everyone talks about it, so there must be a book about it. Well, actually, no, there's not a book about how to become a cyber mentor. I had to go write it. We're still proofing it. Most of this is plagiarized egregiously, but basically I had to figure out how to become a mentor. And I didn't realize that this was one of the biggest problems. I go to the men in our industry and say, I want you to be a mentor for one of our people. And they say, wow, Patrick, I would love to be, but I'm not qualified. And I don't care how many years of cyber experience we have, none of us feel qualified to be a cyber mentor. We know we're not. So this is one of the challenges that we also had to overcome. The other thing about this is that this is building resources and capabilities in places I didn't know. And my perfect example of this is a young man named Guillaume. Guillaume is in my cybersecurity defense team. He's basically the people who chases after the people once they get in. But I asked him to come teach, and he was amazing. And if you could see the faces on all of the cohort, they were just like, wow, he's amazing. And we all kind of were going back in the office saying, you know, we always thought Guillaume was pretty cool, but we had no idea he was a rock star. And I said, Guillaume, what happened? And he said, oh, Patrick, I was really afraid of that, and I didn't know what to do. So I spent 2 weeks on YouTube learning how professors teach and learning how to become an educator. His career has skyrocketed since then. His self-confidence has skyrocketed. Our vision of Guillaume in the office is completely different. And so this program is not just a women's program. It's benefiting the men who are participating in it tremendously as well. And this is one of the other really important things, is for those men who want to figure out and do something and be part of something that changes the discussion. We have a program that is actually authentic and genuine and allows us to do that. And that's one of the things that was a surprise benefit. I had no idea this is what we were creating. Now, we do have our challenges. And one of the things I love is the quote that nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. And the reason I use this quote is I'm working these days with some hostage negotiators on some really difficult things around crypto locker and ransom and the cyber ransoms that we're being faced with these days. And one of the quotes that came out of these guys completely stopped me in my tracks and said, this is exactly what the challenge we're dealing with. We can train these people and we can get them ready for careers in cybersecurity, but we have a huge problem still getting that first hire, getting them in the door, getting them the first 3 months of experience because they don't have 3 years of experience. And what these hostage negotiators were talking about is that why the IBM statement is it's not about failure. If I hire IBM, I can still fail. If I hire a man who's less than fully prepared, I can still fail. That's understandable. But what we're afraid of as hiring managers is we're afraid of failing in a new way. So we did something different, and then we didn't work out. And that's the true failure. And so this is one of the challenges that we're dealing with. Each and every individual hiring decision is a gut wrench. And as a person who has to make those hiring decisions myself, I completely understand how difficult that is to take that risk on someone. And this is where we are really struggling still to make sure that these people are able to get picked up. This is our second cohort in Brussels. The lady on the far left is working for Laborelec, which is the NG company. She actually protects nuclear power stations. And I'm so happy to have her. The lady next to her, Nelly, has a degree in application development, and we're still trying to find a place for her. The lady with the top knot is, she used to carry a rifle for the Belgian Ministry of Defense, and she carried that rifle in very dusty, unpleasant places. And she's now looking to work in cleaner offices, as she likes to describe it. And so we're looking for a place for her. She was actually really excited to join the EU or to join NATO. What we're finding is that the hiring practices in some of these organizations where those of us who are deeply intrinsically motivated to be protectors of our society, it's very, very hard to get them in. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now with these cohorts. This is another surprise success story. This is a lady who is part of our platform, if you will, part of our cohort, part of our community. She has a PhD in physics out of Iran. And in Euroclear, she was being used as an IT release engineer. And if you think about that, that's someone who just checks a few boxes and then says, go, sends the software on its way. We brought her in not as one of our cohort, not someone because she was way overqualified for a lot of what we were doing, but through her action with us, she got to know the other teachers and mentors who happened to be some of the people in leadership at Euroclear, and so they found a way to make room for her. And this is one of the things that I also love about this community, is that we're finding different ways to help people. There's a new effort underway, an executive outreach. The chief of staff of SWIFT, Jessica Ramos, went on to become somebody at the European Banking Authority. And we're saying, how do we give her the skills? How do we help our executives reach a greater degree of competency in this domain? And so we're trying to deal with this issue as well. And I'll leave on this note. We've created an interesting platform, an interesting community of people that people like to work with. And so I was chatting with these guys who do hostage negotiation. Calvin Christie, who's the former head of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police hostage negotiation team. And as they get interested and excited about us, they say, well, wait, hey, why don't we hop on an airplane and come and see you? And so quite literally, this coming July, we're going to be hosting these people for a public session, yes, but then we're also going to have a 4-hour deep dive session into hostage negotiation. Now, if you think about what hostage negotiation is, this is career negotiation as well. This is career success. And so I'm terribly excited at having these types of profiles coming out to join us for this. So to wrap this up, we have 3 cohorts right now. We are recruiting for our 4th cohort here in Brussels. We're expanding to The Hague as well as Luxembourg. We want to be in every EU member state that we can be in. It's not easy. It's hugely challenging, but it's also hugely rewarding. And the thing that's most important about it is that it's the community coming out to support us that makes this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patrick, this has been fascinating. I do retain your comment on how difficult it is to get into the European institutions, but we have also experienced ourselves how difficult it is to attract people with skills in the area of cybersecurity, I can assure you. So I hope also that the promotion of these events will help. We have received some very interesting messages from people who are watching through the live stream, asking us how they can support this effort. It is so interesting. Most of them, of course, women who work in the private sector in the area of cybersecurity. So it shows you that they realize that what we say takes a lot of effort and that it needs a lot of support, and we thank them. We also received some questions, I think more about opportunities for women who want to invest. So, for instance, if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking for the latest questions. If there are opportunities for startups in the area for women, and how you see, in your experience from the women that you have met, if there's an interest towards this direction. This is one area of questions that we have received. I don't know if there are any questions from the room. We also have colleagues from Luxembourg who are watching. Yes, and you can state who you are and please ask your questions.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. It's Anna Maria Femin, and I work for DG Connect. It's been already 5 years. I also work on policy issues in relation to ICT technologies. Coming back to Jane's slide, which presented males as ambassadors. So I very much agree with you that, of course, men are part of the solution, but they're also part of the problem, because they held most of the leading positions, and I'm not sure how in the private sector, the top-level management and even the middle-level management, they take into consideration diversity as a tool that could, of course, increase value. So my question to you is, how do you transform them into becoming our ambassadors? I mean, it's a question for all of you. So, and congratulations for what you have achieved so far.
Thank you. So we've got to work on culture, we've got to work on leadership. So I really don't see it as a case of men or women. It's really not. Actually, it's people looking the other way. So say when something is done which is not good or correct, someone is harassed or someone is bullied, or someone is paid less and things like that. It's, I know men who have fought for women to be paid, the right salary, and actually called out HR for not, and saying to HR, if you do not pay this woman, who I've recruited, who happens to be the best person for the job, and by the way, she's come from this organization, she's been paid incorrectly for 3 years now, and he's unaware. If you do not pay her market rate, I will call this out as a gender diversity issue. It really is, it's telling stories like this, it's empowering people to be able to speak up, to call things out and not look the other way. And I know as many women that have looked the other way, and I understand sometimes why that has gone on, and I do for men, as I do for men. So it really is making sure that we build great environments that are built for all people, as opposed to just actually working for the men. So it's the patriarchy. And that comes down to really, I think, teaching good leadership. Yes, we know that if we get women in startups early in the phases, like Becky Pinkard is there. Patrick referred to her. She's a good friend of mine. Digital Shadows sponsored the book. They are great. I don't want to call them a startup, but they're not that old of a company. But when I interviewed them when I was writing the book, they said, some of our early employees were women, and we know that companies do better when they have women involved right at the very beginning. So it's coming back to this whole why do more women not start jobs and things like that when we have so many capable women out there performing these roles? I do think it comes down to this whole risk appetite. They see things in a different way, and maybe it is that they don't believe that they can do. Maybe their risk appetite isn't quite sufficient for them to go and do it. Now, I did do that when I was in my 20s, but I didn't do it alone. I did it with a male partner, and we did it together. But my risk appetite might be slightly higher, but there are still lots of women like me. So again, it's showing the role models that you can do it too, and you don't have to put up with that type of environment. Go do it for yourself. Build it, create it, and then show them how to do it. That's my view on what we need to be doing. Standing up and saying, no, that's not correct. I will not be treated like that. And yes, I will work. And by the way, I am valuable, and I will go and work for that company who has a brilliant environment, and I know the signals to look out for. Or I'll go and start my own, and I'll build the culture, and I'll build the team because I can do it. That's my view. Sorry.
You're looking at me, so I think I have to say a few things as well. One of the things I have found very interesting, because as a beard, and I spend a fair amount of time in some of these rooms with some C-level executives, the level of idiocy is some of the same that you find in every other room. Don't expect our executives to be anything other than the humans they were raised to be. They are part of our culture, with the great things as well as the not so great things. But one of the challenges that we put in front of the members in our cohort is that we're trying to give them access to tools, but also to make sure that they understand how to use these tools, and that they have permission to use these tools. And it's one of the greatest frustrations I have when we talk about the differences between men and women, is that a man will walk into a room, or he will break into a room when he has 50% of the qualifications to be there, whereas a woman will wait to be invited when she has 99% of the qualifications to be there. And I'm not saying this is around assertiveness training. I'm not one to blame a victim or even get into this discussion around that, because I think it's not appropriate. But this is one of the things that I'm really trying to figure out, and we're really struggling with, is how we relate to career challenges and how we relate to getting better at them, and making sure that we do get everything out of it that's possible. And I think one of the things that's really amazing and great these days is the fact that we're having these discussions and there is an expectation. And when I spend most of my time with these executives, we're really talking about cognitive diversity We really want to go beyond just a gender diversity discussion. Now, that's at the highest level. It's in the mid-career level that we have the biggest challenges, getting people to take that risk with us. And so for that, we have to show and prove and demand that. And I'm sorry to say it's still a hard challenge for us, and it's one that we need to be up to.
From Luxembourg?
Yes, please, colleagues, go ahead.
Is it Luxembourg, yes? Yes. I would like to thank you all for the efforts put in the Connect University. It's an event that I couldn't follow up until now, although I was trying to online, but the workloads in the Commission is just going up and up. So now I took the time to come and I don't regret a little bit. I would like to say that women in cyber security, what else more natural due to our intuition? And as Patrick just mentioned, we wait too long to be invited, and that invitation will never come. So that's why I think it's important what the Commission has done recently, more and more, not only for cybersecurity, but also for the football teams, for instance. When I saw for the first time the ad we had during all the championship, European championship about the women football team, I was so happy to see the Commission logo. But coming back to what we've discussed today, I appreciated each and every speech, and I highly appreciated our Hungarian member of the board, hello, and Put, the way she built the career as a mother and also in between with the job, and the way she chose to talk to us, not in the formal commission staff way, but speaking freely. Not that I did not appreciate all the statistics. I'm coming from Eurostat. I'm coming in Eurostat from the unit on innovation, R&D, statistics. So one of my field is to measure how the STEM women evolution over time. And what do we see? What you reflected in your statistics, because they are taking from my statistics from Eurostat. The evolution is ever so slowly. So yes, the invitation will never come. The potential will never be used, as Patrick also mentioned. The way the Commission now acts is for the better. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words. I think they are probably the perfect complement. I don't know, Annette, if you want to say something to your compatriot before we close.
Yes, thank you very much, really, from my heart for this very nice comment. But I have to tell you something. It's not only me who is active in cyber defense and cyber security and has a family. Jane has a family. I think, Despina, you have a family. Many people here have families, and I already mentioned a couple of words about my company that I represent. We have 25% of our ethical hackers who are female, and they take key positions in the company. All of them but one, they have families. And one of them has, for example, 3 children, the other has 4 children. So nothing is impossible. Thank you.
For a woman, nothing will ever be impossible. When a woman sets her mind, she will do it, and she will do it twice as nice and beautiful than a man would ever do it.
Well, I think that is the perfect way to close the session. I want to thank Jane, Annette, and Patrick, especially Jane and Annette. You also traveled to be here with us. Patrick, as I said, is a local, even though he comes from California. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you all. I want to thank the colleagues who were in the room, those who are on the live stream, who are many, the colleagues from Luxembourg. You gave us a lot of interesting feedback for our efforts, but also a very pleasant session and I am particularly grateful for that, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And thank you to all the colleagues who have followed.